Tennessee has added its name to the growing list of states that has banned critical race theory on a state level, but now we actually get into a much more interesting question. How does that get enforced? How do states like Idaho, Oklahoma, Tennessee, all of the states that have these bills on the dockets that are pissing off the Democrats, pissing off the teachers' unions by daring to say that you should not be teaching children that they live in a fundamentally racist place and that it's okay to force people to feel guilty because of how they were born. How do these bans then get enforced? You know, a scary thought that I had last week, I was laying in bed at the end of a long day, and the nightmare thought that popped into my head was, what if every state in the union ends up banning critical race theory? Like, fantastic. Do we even have teachers that know how to teach without teaching critical race theory? I mean, because listen, like, critical race theory has not only infected the entire batch of teachers that we have in school systems now, not like 100% of them, but it's infected a lot of them, a very significant majority, not only of all the teachers teaching in schools currently, but it's also infected all of the teachers, the professors in the colleges of education that are training the current teachers. And so this is a problem that very literally will take at least one generation, if not several generations, to fix, because of the supply of teachers is currently so thoroughly tainted. And not only is the supply of teachers thoroughly tainted, but the people who train the teachers to be teachers are thoroughly tainted. And I was laying in bed last week thinking about this and going, oh my God, literally the only way this problem gets solved is if parents really start homeschooling their children in record numbers, if school choice initiatives start passing things like that. And my worst fears were confirmed this morning when Deb Philman of the YouTube channel The Reason We Learn, that you should all be subscribed to, made me aware of this article right here. Tennessee educators respond to proposed limits on teaching racism. Now, we're going to read this article, but let me just give a spoiler alert. The teachers are blatantly saying that they are going to ignore the law and teach what they want to teach anyway because they don't think it's going to be enforced. Let's take a look. History education has been in the spotlight this year, from parents and students demanding more diverse content to legislators in some states banning topics in the classroom. Starting next year, Tennessee teachers will have to restrict their instruction on race and racism under recently passed legislation that Governor Bill Lee is expected to sign into law. Now, okay, hang on. I'm not going to talk about how the bill probably doesn't ban all teaching of all race and all racism. This is a lie that the Democrats and the media like to tell, when in fact it is a much more nuanced thing than that. If you want to go back and watch some of my other videos on this topic, I will be happy to explain to you how the media and the Democrats lie to try to convince people that these bills ban everything under the sun, when in fact they ban a very, very small, specific thing, but you can go watch some of my other videos for that. The legislation allows the state education commissioner to withhold funds from school districts where teachers promote elements of critical race theory. Through the use of data and storytelling, critical race theory raises awareness about how racism and bias affect individuals of society. No, wrong. The Tennessee bill targeting the field comes amidst similar discussions among lawmakers in Georgia, Idaho, Utah, and Arkansas, and New Hampshire, mother effers. We asked Tennessee educators their thoughts on recent legislation what effects it will have on their student teaching and outlook. Here are some of their responses. Now, before we even read these responses, I want you to note these teachers gave their full name, what they specifically teach, and where they teach. There is these teachers are in absolutely no fear of any repercussions of anything happening to them if they blatantly ignore a law that is about to be signed in their state. Liz here says, to be frank, the bill will not make it harder for my personal classroom because I plan to ignore it. Who's going to enforce it? This bill that viciously favors white children and ignores the needs of children of color. All the reported reasons I read there were given by lawmakers were to protect the feelings of white children, with no thought or concern to what is best for society as a whole or for children of color. I don't see how this bill actually bans anything that I want to do. This says that we should not teach that America is inherently racist or that people are inherently anything because of their race. I don't see how this bans critical race theory. So this teacher, Michael, who is a substitute teacher in Memphis, is basically saying that he doesn't actually know what critical race theory is, even though this is the argument they like to make against us at this point. They're like, you don't even know what critical race theory is. I don't even know why we're having this conversation because you don't know what you're talking about. Michael here blatantly doesn't know what critical race theory is. The rhetoric behind this bill is horrible, but the wording doesn't seem to prevent me from teaching that redlining is racist or many cops treat black people worse than white people. No, Michael, ironically, is exactly correct. It actually does not prevent teaching either of those things. Our county has very few persons of color. The recent themes of books are mirrors and windows has been my emphasis for selection this year. Diverse topics are a hot topic for good reason. Instead of broadening our worldview, this legislation narrows it. It goes against the Education Commissioner's demand that every county have a diverse teaching staff. No, it doesn't. Nope. Wrong. How will this come across to teachers of color or those that are contemplating entering the profession? Travis says, it will make it harder for me to teach in the classroom as most of my students face racism and discrimination in this country. This is a math teacher. A math teacher. Travis is a math teacher. Good teachers should be willing to teach the truth, which is that every system in the United States is built on racism and slavery. Travis wants to be able to teach about race in math class. How exactly is that going to help Travis's students be better at math? The real issue is that this bill strengthens an unfortunate misconception about social studies. It seeks to reinforce the idea that social studies, history, and the English language arts are dispassionate and should consist of arbitrary facts pushed down the throats of our children without context. The Egyptians created hieroglyphics because Egyptians created hieroglyphics. What? This is literally what it says. The Egyptians created hieroglyphics because Egyptians created hieroglyphics. This is a social studies teacher, okay? Achilles just happened to have a really close buddy named Patrocles. We teachers of history are expected to be dispassionate, goofy nerds who love fiddling with old coins because they're old. What is this person even saying? I have no idea what this person's point is. Good thing they're teaching children. Oh, this looks like a good one. Michael, English and English as a second language teacher. The Republican Party has focused on cancel culture quite a bit recently, but this bill is its own form of cancel culture that goes entirely too far. History teachers cannot adequately teach about the Trail of Tears. Wrong. The Civil War. Wrong. And the Civil Rights Movement. Also wrong. You can teach about all those things, Michael. The bill doesn't prevent you from doing that. English teachers would have to avoid teaching almost any text by an African-American author because many of them mention racism to various extents. Wrong. The bill doesn't prevent you from teaching about this. Even classics written by white authors like To Kill a Mockingbird and Huckleberry Finn will now be off limits. Okay, so Michael is having a total derangement meltdown, apparently. Both history and English content standards require students to think critically. Teachers are evaluated based on our ability to inspire critical thinking, and yet Michael can't even seem to read a bill to find out that everything he just said in the first part of his quote is a lie. How are we supposed to teach the students and have our students think critically when we can only present and discuss one side of the issue? My thought is how are they going to stop me from teaching and having these important discussions with students? I am not a lawbreaker. Well, you actually are if you're ignoring the law. If you are Todd, English teacher, if you are ignoring the law, that actually does make you a lawbreaker in real life. I am by nature a rule follower. But what I am doing is preparing my students for entry into colleges. Colleges are not going to shy away from these discussions. Well, they are if they want state aid and the state's banning them. In fact, many colleges are going to force students to think about these things, and if they are not prepared for the content and discussions, then they are going to be behind. Well, there we have it, folks. A list of teachers who are fully willing to give their name, where they teach, and the first one is really the best quote. The first one, to be frank, the bill will not make it harder for my personal classroom because I plan to ignore it. Who's going to enforce it, says Liz. This is what's going to happen with these bills. And this is why it is even more important for you to be paying attention to what your kids are learning, or even better, quite frankly, pull them out of school entirely, start campaigning for school choice if you haven't done that already. The schools are not fixable. This is not a fixable problem. This is not going to be, if you have children in school right now, I don't care if they are just going into kindergarten. If you have children in school right now, then this problem is not going to be fixed in their tenure in primary or secondary school, and probably not long after they leave that. This problem is going to continue. It doesn't matter if we throw everything we have at it right now, because again, the supply of teachers is completely and totally tainted. Not 100%. There are still good teachers out there that are not teaching this nonsense and do not support this nonsense, but the majority of them do, and the majority of the teacher trainers do. And the only way around it is to start homeschooling your kids. So if you want information on doing that, if that seems overwhelming, you want to go to the YouTube channel, The Reason We Learn from Deb Philman. She also has a locals community that you can join. She helps parents homeschool their kids. She assures me it's really not that hard. I have to take her word for it. I don't have kids. I'm fighting for other people's kids. Don't have any of my own. But, listen, you got to start taking this stuff seriously. This is not a joke. The teachers are telling you that they're going to ignore it. If people tell you who they are, believe them. Believe them. All right, guys, that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you think you're subscribed, just go ahead and give it a little double check for me, because YouTube sometimes likes to make that decision for you. You can also leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, turn on all those notifications if you haven't turned them on already. That's all I have for right now. I will see you soon.